The bathroom door felt cold against my palm as I pushed it open. I needed to fix my lipstick before the toasts began. Our engagement party was in full swing just outside, champagne flowing and laughter echoing through the banquet hall. I was adjusting my dress when I heard Brandon's voice drift through the slightly open window that connected to the smoking patio. "She's covering everything, right?" His brother's laugh followed. "The venue, the honeymoon deposits, all of it." "Every cent," Brandon replied. His voice carried that smug tone I'd been hearing more lately. "I'll ride this out until maybe June, then I'm done. She'll be too embarrassed to ask for anything back." The lipstick slipped from my fingers and clattered into the sink. My reflection stared back at me, frozen. The face looking back seemed like a stranger's. Outside that window, my future husband was counting down the days until he could escape our marriage. And he was laughing about it. I picked up the lipstick with shaking hands. The perfect fiancé smile returned to my face. But everything inside me had already shattered. My name is Lauren. I'm 29 years old, and until that moment outside the bathroom, I believed I knew what my life would look like. I grew up in a small Ohio town where people kept their promises and love meant something real. My parents had been married for 33 years. I thought Brandon and I would follow that same path. I worked as a school counselor, helping kids navigate their problems. Somehow, I'd missed every warning sign in my own life. Brandon was a sales manager at a tech company. He was charming, confident, and knew exactly what to say to make people trust him. Including me. We'd been engaged for 7 months. The wedding was 94 days away. I had the countdown app on my phone, the Pinterest boards, the vendor contracts signed. Everything was planned down to the napkin colors. But standing in that bathroom, hearing his casual betrayal, I realized something. I wasn't the woman planning her dream wedding anymore. I was someone else entirely. Someone who needed to be smarter, faster, and quieter than the man who thought he'd already won. The proposal happened at his mother's birthday party 6 months earlier. I should have known then. Brandon got down on one knee in front of his entire family, but his eyes never met mine. He looked at the crowd, at his mother's delighted face, at his father nodding approval. The ring was beautiful, but the moment felt rehearsed. Everyone clapped. His mother cried and pulled me into a hug that felt more like acclaim than affection. Brandon's sister Marla rolled her eyes but smiled for the camera. His father shook Brandon's hand like they'd closed a business deal. I said yes because everyone was watching. Because it seemed ungrateful to hesitate. Because I thought the nervousness I felt was just normal wedding jitters. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the ring. It was gorgeous, exactly my style. But I couldn't remember Brandon ever asking about my style. I couldn't remember him asking about much at all. Stop overthinking, I told myself. He loves you. But even then, a tiny voice whispered back, does he? Brandon's sister Marla made her opinion clear from the start. At family dinners, she'd make comments about my clothes being cute, in a simple way, or my job being sweet, like a hobby. When I talked about my work helping students, she'd check her phone. Marla's just protective, Brandon always said. She wants to make sure you're tough enough for this family. But it didn't feel like protection. It felt like testing. Like I was being measured against an invisible standard I could never meet. Once, she actually told me I was too plain for the family photos. Brandon laughed it off as a joke. I tried harder. I bought nicer clothes. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I agreed with opinions I didn't share. Each time I bent, Marla pushed harder. And Brandon never stopped her. That's just how she is, he'd say, shrugging. What he never said was, that's not okay. He never said, don't talk to Lauren that way. He never once chose me over keeping the peace with Marla. I should have ended it then. But I thought love meant compromise. I didn't realize I was the only one compromising. The wedding budget meeting happened at his parents' house. His mother served coffee in china cups that made me nervous to hold. Brandon's father spread out a spreadsheet on the dining table like we were planning a corporate merger. So, Lauren, his father began, Brandon mentioned you wanted to discuss costs. I thought we could split things evenly, I said. My voice sounded small in that large dining room. Brandon shifted in his seat. Well, actually, honey, I was thinking. You make steady money as a counselor. My commissions fluctuate. Maybe you could cover a bit more? A bit more turned into most of it. Then all of it. His mother mentioned that her family had certain expectations for the wedding. His father noted that investments made it difficult to access liquid cash right now. Brandon looked at me with those pleading eyes I could never resist. I just want our day to be perfect, he said. I agreed to cover the costs. $60,000. I had savings. Inheritance from my grandmother. I told myself marriage meant sharing everything anyway. What I didn't know was that Brandon had already planned to share nothing back. The guest list became our first real fight. I wanted 50 guests. Small, intimate, meaningful. Brandon's family submitted a list of 90 people. When I asked about my side, his mother pursed her lips. Perhaps we should keep your family to the essentials, she said. We want the photos to look cohesive. Cohesive. That word burned into my memory. My mother left the room in tears. My father's jaw tightened in the way it did when he was controlling his anger. I ended up with 15 seats for my entire family and friends. Brandon's side took up the rest. It's just numbers, Brandon said when I tried to talk to him. Don't make this difficult. But it wasn't about numbers. It was about erasing me. About making sure everyone at our wedding knew which family really mattered. I looked at the seating chart and couldn't find myself anywhere in it. I was becoming invisible in my own wedding. My mother asked if I was sure about this marriage. I assured her everything was fine. I was lying to her. I was lying to myself. The truth was too terrifying to face. When I tried to talk to Brandon about feeling excluded, he turned it around so fast I got dizzy. Suddenly I was the problem. I was being dramatic. I didn't understand how real families worked. I was too sensitive, too demanding, too difficult. If you can't handle my family, we have a serious problem, he said. His voice had gone cold in a way I'd never heard before. I apologized. I actually apologized for feeling hurt. I promised to try harder, to be more understanding, to fit in better. He softened immediately, kissed my forehead, told me he knew I could do it. That's when I learned the pattern. Express a concern, get blamed for it, apologize, receive temporary affection. It would happen again and again over the next months. Each time, I swallowed a little more of myself. Each time, I believed a little less in my own reality. My best friend from college, Melissa, called it gaslighting. I told her she was wrong. I told her Brandon loved me. I told her everything was fine. I was defending the man who was already planning my exit. The prenup appeared out of nowhere. Brandon brought it up casually over dinner, like he was mentioning a dentist appointment. His parents wanted us to have one. Just to protect everyone. Nothing personal. I read through it that night. The document was 12 pages of legal language that basically said, everything I owned before the marriage stayed mine, everything he owned stayed his, and anything acquired during the marriage would be split based on a complicated formula that heavily favored him. The strangest part? Brandon didn't have any assets. His car was leased. He rented his apartment. His bank account, from what I'd seen, usually hovered around $3,000. What exactly was he protecting? I told him I needed time to think about it. He got defensive immediately. Did I not trust him? Was I planning to divorce him already? His mother called to say she was disappointed in my attitude. I didn't sign it. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I lied. I told Brandon I'd signed it and would bring it to the lawyer's office myself. Then I called my college roommate, Alexis, who'd become a family lawyer. I need help, I told her. Quietly. Brandon and Marla created our wedding registry without me. I found out through social media. Marla posted a photo of them at a high-end home store, champagne glasses in hand, with the caption, picking out the perfect pieces for Brandon and Lauren. #engaged life, #blessed sister. The comments poured in. Everyone praised Brandon's sophisticated taste. Someone wrote, "Lucky Lauren, getting a man with such style." Another said, "He clearly knows what makes a house a home." I opened the registry link. Crystal vases I'd never pick. Modernist furniture I actively disliked. Kitchen gadgets for cooking styles I didn't use. Not a single item reflected anything about me. It was like decorating a home for a stranger. When I called Brandon, he acted confused. "I thought you'd appreciate the help. You're so busy with work." "But none of this is my style," I said. "It's our style now," he corrected. "You'll learn to love it." That phrase stuck with me. You'll learn to love it. Like my preferences were wrong. Like I needed to be trained into becoming someone else. Someone who fit into the life Brandon was designing without me. The engagement photos were scheduled for a Saturday morning in March. Brandon showed up 20 minutes late, apologizing about traffic. The photographer, a kind woman named Patricia, tried to make us comfortable. But we weren't comfortable. Brandon checked his phone constantly. When Patricia asked us to look at each other, his eyes slid past mine. When she asked us to talk about how we met, he gave a version of the story I barely recognized. "Try to relax," Patricia whispered to me. "Just be yourself." But I didn't know who that was anymore. I smiled when directed. I tilted my head. I let Brandon's arm rest around my waist while his thumbs scrolled through messages behind my back. When the photos came back, I didn't recognize the woman in them. My smile was too wide, too frozen. My eyes looked empty. Brandon posted his favorite shot with the caption, "Can't wait to marry this beautiful woman." The comments said I looked radiant. Perfect. Glowing. Nobody noticed I looked like I was drowning. I saved that photo to my phone. Not as a memory, but as evidence. My father pulled me aside during a family dinner 2 weeks later. We were in my parents' backyard, away from everyone else. The spring air smelled like fresh grass and honeysuckle. "Lauren," he said carefully. "I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me." I braced myself. My father wasn't dramatic. If he needed to pull me aside, it was serious. "Brandon isn't building a life with you. He's using yours." The words hit like cold water. I started to argue, to defend, to explain. But my father held up his hand. "I've watched him for 7 months now. He doesn't ask about your day. He doesn't celebrate your successes. He changes plans without telling you. He lets his family treat you like you're temporary." My father's voice cracked. "You're not temporary, sweetheart. You're the whole damn world." I cried in the car afterward. Not because I thought he was wrong. But because I was terrified he might be right. And if he was right, it meant I'd wasted months on someone who never valued me at all. It meant I'd been a fool. The dress fitting happened on a Thursday afternoon. Brandon was supposed to come. Not to see the dress, but to be there, to wait in the showroom, to be part of the moment. He'd promised. He forgot. When I called him, confused and hurt, he sighed with irritation. Marla needed help moving furniture. "I told you this." He hadn't told me anything. I stood in the bridal shop, looking at myself in a beautiful dress, and felt completely alone. The sales assistant tried to be encouraging, but her eyes held pity. I could see it. The bride who came by herself. The girl nobody showed up for. I picked a dress because I had to. It was beautiful. Delicate lace, perfect fit. But when I looked in the mirror, all I saw was a woman playing pretend. This wasn't a dream coming true. This was just something that was happening to me. I took a photo of myself in the dress. Not for social media. For my folder. The one labeled evidence. The folder that was growing thicker every day. A week later, Brandon made an offhand comment that changed everything. We were at dinner with friends, laughing about wedding stress, when Brandon leaned back and grinned. "Once we're married, Lauren should probably consider something more flexible than school counseling. Something that works around my schedule better." I froze. "What do you mean?" "Well, I travel for work. And we'll want kids soon. It makes sense for you to have a job with more flexibility." He said it so casually. Like we'd discussed this. We hadn't. We'd never talked about me changing careers. We'd barely talked about kids beyond someday. His friends nodded like this was reasonable. My friend Melissa, who was at the table, caught my eye. Her expression said everything. That night, Brandon brought up kids again. He wanted 3. Soon. Within the first 2 years of marriage. He'd already planned it out. I'd take maternity leave, then maybe work part-time from home. His career was taking off. It made sense for me to be the flexible one. What about what I want? I asked. He looked genuinely confused. I thought you wanted a family. I do. But I also want my career. He shrugged. You can't have everything, Lauren. I started keeping track of everything. Not consciously at first, just little things that didn't add up. A screenshot here. A saved email there. A voice memo recorded during an argument when Brandon accused me of making things up. Alexis, my lawyer friend, had suggested it during one of our quiet phone calls. If you're having doubts, just document. You don't have to do anything with it. But if you need it later, you'll have it. So I documented. Text messages where Brandon canceled plans last minute. Receipts showing I'd paid for everything from dinner dates to his car insurance. Emails from his mother outlining her expectations for my behavior as her daughter-in-law. I created a folder on my laptop. Password protected. Hidden in a subfolder labeled Work Documents. Inside was the truth of my relationship. Every dismissal. Every broken promise. Every red flag I'd been ignoring. The folder grew bigger each week. By April, it was undeniable. The pattern wasn't in my head. It was real, documented, and impossible to explain away. I wasn't crazy. I was just finally paying attention. Then came the Venmo notification. I wasn't snooping. My phone was connected to our shared iPad, and notifications appeared on both devices. A payment from Brandon to someone named Haley for $900. The note said, "Trip refund." My stomach dropped. What trip? Brandon and I hadn't gone anywhere recently. I'd never heard him mention a Haley. When he got home, I asked casually. Hey, who's Haley? His face changed instantly. Defensive. Angry. Why are you checking my transactions? I wasn't. It popped up on the iPad. I don't have time for your jealousy, Lauren. Haley is a coworker. We split costs for a work conference. That's it. But his voice was too sharp. His explanation too quick. And when I tried to ask more, he shut down completely. Told me I was being paranoid. Said if I didn't trust him, maybe we had bigger problems. I apologized. Again. But this time, I took a screenshot first. Added it to my folder. And I started asking different questions. Not to Brandon. To his coworkers' social media accounts. To flight tracking apps. To hotel booking sites. The pieces started fitting together in ways that made me sick. At Sunday brunch with his friends, Brandon made a joke. We were at a trendy restaurant downtown, mimosas flowing, everyone relaxed. The conversation turned to real estate. Well, I'm not worried, Brandon said, laughing. Lauren's buying the house for us. I'm just going to show up and enjoy it. His friends laughed. Someone made a comment about landing a sugar mama. Brandon grinned and shrugged. What can I say? I know how to play my cards. One person at the table didn't laugh. Melissa. She stared at Brandon with open disgust, then looked at me with concern. After brunch, she texted, "Are you okay?" That wasn't funny. But I'd already screenshotted the Venmo transaction to the group chat where Brandon had sent a message earlier that week, letting her cover the house down payment. She doesn't even realize I'm playing her. He'd send it to the wrong chat. Meant for his brother. Ended up in his college friends group instead. Someone had screenshotted and sent it to Melissa, who'd send it to me. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't love turning bad. This had never been love at all. Brandon announced a bachelor party weekend. Camping, he said. Just him and his closest friends, disconnecting from technology, bonding before the wedding. He'd be gone from Thursday through Sunday. I smiled and told him to have fun. I even helped him pack his camping gear. Kissed him goodbye at the door. Then I checked his laptop. The one he left open on the dining table. The one with his email still logged in. The Vegas hotel confirmation was right there. For nights at a casino resort. Pool parties. Nightclub reservations. Not a tent or a campfire in sight. I didn't confront him. That would have tipped my hand. Instead, I called Alexis. I need to move faster, I told her. I need to know my legal standing if I end this engagement. She asked careful questions. How much had I spent? Were there any shared assets? Had I signed anything? Was there evidence of fraud or deception? I had evidence of everything. Months of it. Documentation of financial manipulation, emotional abuse, and deliberate deception. Alexis was quiet for a long moment after I sent her the files. Lauren, she finally said. This is ironclad. You're protected. But more than that, you're free. The florist called on a Tuesday morning. She sounded apologetic and confused. Hi, Lauren. I wanted to confirm the cancellation you requested yesterday. I'd requested no such thing. I didn't cancel anything. Oh. Long pause. Your fiancé called and said you'd changed your mind about the floral arrangements. He canceled the entire order and said you'd be going in a different direction. My hands went numb. He canceled everything? The ceremony arrangements, the bouquets, the reception centerpieces. All of it. He said you were overwhelmed and needed to simplify. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called 2 more vendors. The photographer had been contacted about postponing. The DJ had received a message about possibly canceling. The cake baker had been told we might want to go smaller. Brandon was systematically dismantling our wedding. Piece by piece. Setting it up to look like I was the one having second thoughts. So when he walked away, everyone would think I'd driven him to it. I'd be the unstable bride who couldn't handle the pressure. He'd be the patient fiancé who tried his best. It was genius, really. Cruel and calculated, but genius. Almost worked, too. Except he underestimated how thorough I'd become. I heard him talking to Marla on the phone. He thought I was in the shower. I was actually in the hallway, frozen in place as his words drifted through the bedroom door. I might just ghost before the wedding if I'm not feeling it, Brandon said. Cut my losses, you know. She's already paid for everything. It's not like I owe her anything. Marla's laugh came through the speaker. You're terrible. But honestly, she's so boring. You can do way better. I know, right? I just need to make it look like her fault. The cancellations are working. People are already asking if she's okay. My hands trembled. But I didn't cry. Something inside me had gone completely cold. Clinical. I walked silently back to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and stood under the water fully clothed. Let myself feel it for 5 minutes. The betrayal. The humiliation. The rage. Then I turned off the water. Dried off. Got dressed. Opened my laptop and created a new folder. I labeled it, Exit Strategy. Over the next hour, I compiled everything. Every screenshot. Every recording. Every receipt. I organized it into a clear timeline. I wrote a detailed account of everything I discovered. I prepared emails to both families. I drafted a formal notice about financial liability. By midnight, I was ready. I just had to wait for the right moment. The moment came at our engagement party. The one Brandon had insisted on having despite the wedding being weeks away. His parents hosted it at an expensive banquet hall. 200 people attended. Everyone important to both families was there. I wore a blue dress Brandon had never seen before. I did my makeup carefully. I smiled and greeted guests and played the role perfectly. The happy bride-to-be. The grateful fiancé. Then I excused myself to fix my lipstick. That's when I heard Brandon and his brother outside the bathroom window. That's when the last piece of my denial shattered. I stood in that bathroom, staring at my reflection, and made my choice. I could confront him now. Make a scene. Let him spin this his way. Or I could be smarter. I fixed my lipstick. Walked back into the party. Found Brandon laughing with his friends. I touched his arm gently. Can I steal you for a moment? My voice was sweet. Calm. We stepped aside. I looked up at him with clear eyes. I need to tell you something, I said. I'm not going through with the wedding. His face went blank. What? I'm ending our engagement. Tonight. Brandon pulled me into a side hallway, away from the guests. His face had gone red, confusion and anger mixing together. What are you talking about? Is this a joke? I heard you, I said quietly. Outside the bathroom. Talking to your brother about leaving me. About how I'm paying for everything. About your exit plan. He recovered quickly. Denied everything. Said I'd misunderstood. That I was being crazy and dramatic. That we could talk about this later, but not here, not now, not in front of everyone. You're right, I agreed. We won't talk about it here. His shoulders relaxed. He thought he'd won. Thought he'd smoothed it over. But I'm still ending this, I continued. I'm leaving now. My family is leaving with me. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive formal notification that I'm not legally or financially liable for any wedding expenses from this point forward. You're welcome to keep the deposits I've already paid. Consider it a gift. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You can't do this. I already did. I took off the engagement ring and placed it gently in his hand. Goodbye, Brandon. I walked back into the party. Found my parents. Whispered that we needed to leave. They asked no questions, just gathered their things. Melissa saw us heading out and followed. Behind me, Brandon stood frozen, the ring clutched in his fist, watching his entire plan collapse. I slept well that night. The first real sleep I'd had in months. When I woke up, I sent the emails. One to Brandon's parents. One to my parents. One to key family members on both sides. Attached to each was a detailed but professional account of what I discovered, complete with selected documentation. I didn't air everything. I wasn't cruel. I simply stated facts. The overheard conversations. The cancelled vendors. The financial manipulation. The evidence that this engagement had been built on deception. My phone exploded with calls and messages. I ignored Brandon's. Answered my family's. My mother cried with relief. My father said he was proud of me. Melissa showed up at my apartment with coffee and bagels. You did it, she said, hugging me tight. I did it, I repeated. The words felt strange. But true. Brandon tried damage control. Posted on social media about how shocked he was, how sudden this was, how he'd been blindsided by my decision. His comments filled with sympathetic messages. You deserve better. Her loss. She'll regret this. Then my cousin posted a link. To a voice memo. The one I'd recorded outside the bathroom. Brandon's voice, clear as day, talking about his exit plan. The recording had been timestamped. Verified. Impossible to deny. The sympathetic comments disappeared. New ones appeared. Very different ones. Brandon's carefully constructed image crumbled fast. His co-workers started coming forward. Not to me, but to each other. Stories emerged about inappropriate behavior. Expense reports that didn't match his claims. Women he'd dated and discarded using similar patterns. One reached out to me directly. Her name was Taylor. She'd dated Brandon 2 years before me. Her story was identical to mine. He'd love-bombed her, isolated her from friends, made her pay for everything, then ghosted right before they were supposed to move in together. I tried to warn people, she wrote. But he's so good at making you seem crazy. Thank you for having proof. The proof spread. Not because I shared it maliciously, but because Brandon kept lying. Kept claiming he'd been the victim. Each lie prompted someone to share a receipt, a screenshot, a story. The truth built itself without me having to fight for it. His job placed him on administrative leave. Something about investigation into professional conduct. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. That was his consequence to handle. Marla's engagement imploded 2 weeks later. Turns out she'd been telling her fiancé lies about me, trying to turn him against his own sister who was my friend. When the truth came out, he ended things. Karma worked fast. 6 months later, I stood in my new apartment 3 states away. I'd taken a position at a university counseling center. Better pay, better environment, better everything. My belongings were still in boxes, but the space felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived with Brandon. I started a blog about recognizing emotional manipulation. About protecting yourself in relationships. About trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. It grew faster than I expected. Women reached out daily with similar stories. I realized my experience wasn't unique. It was common. Disturbingly common. Melissa visited for a weekend. We sat on my small balcony, drinking wine and watching the sunset. Do you miss him? She asked carefully. I thought about it. Really thought. No. I miss who I thought he was. But that person never existed. You can't miss someone who was never real. Do you think you'll date again? Eventually. When I'm ready. When I've remembered who I am without someone trying to reshape me. I smiled. I'm in no rush. My phone buzzed. A message from Taylor, Brandon's ex. She'd started dating someone new. Someone kind. She wanted me to know that good men existed. That healing was possible. That we both deserved better. I sent back a heart emoji. Then I blocked Brandon's number. Finally. Permanently. That chapter was closed. A year after the engagement party, I woke up to sunshine streaming through my bedroom window. I made coffee. Checked my blog. Responded to a few messages from women seeking advice. Normal morning routine. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Lauren? A woman's voice. Hesitant. My name is Haley. I'm calling because I think you deserve to know the truth about Brandon. The Venmo Haley. I stayed silent, letting her talk. She explained everything. The Vegas trip had been with her. She'd been dating Brandon for 4 months before I ended our engagement. He'd told her I was his crazy ex-girlfriend, who wouldn't leave him alone. She believed him. Until she found my blog. Read my story. Realized she'd been part of his deception. I'm so sorry, she said, crying. I had no idea he was engaged to you. If I'd known. I know, I interrupted gently. He's good at lying. That's not your fault. We talked for an hour. She told me Brandon had done the same thing to her. Used her for money and connections, then discarded her when she got too close to the truth. She was rebuilding her life now. Healing. Finding herself again. After we hung up, I sat quietly. Thinking about everything. The betrayal. The manipulation. The eventual freedom. Brandon had tried to destroy me quietly, had planned to walk away leaving me broken and blamed. Instead, I'd ended things loudly. With evidence. With truth. With the kind of silence that spoke louder than any argument. I opened my journal and wrote, he wasn't my lesson. He became one. But not about trust or love or choosing better. He taught me something more important, I am enough. I was always enough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve access to my life. I closed the journal. Looked out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably still playing his games with someone new. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I'd moved on. Not just from him, but from the version of myself that accepted less than I deserved. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and finally, completely free. The engagement that ended in one night had changed everything. Just not in the way Brandon planned. I smiled. Made a second cup of coffee. And started planning my day. A day that belonged entirely to me.